Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Well, afternoon for me. You might be watching in Hawaii, in which case maybe it's still morning. So, do I have any Hawaii watchers? I don't know. Kevin Sweeney, are you out there? My friend in Hawaii? Hey friends, I am Colby, and this is my Wednesday afternoon show that right now is called Perspective Shift. Although I'm in the early brainstorming of rebranding and sort of rethinking through this show. Still going live. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still doing my Wednesday afternoon thing, but maybe calling it something a bit different. I think I'm going to email my email list and ask them to help weigh in on a new name. So if you're not on my email list, BT dubs, do that. Yeah, welcome. Cool. So today is the 1-year anniversary from when my book, The Shift, Surviving and Thriving After Moving from Conservative to Progressive Christianity, came into the world. And I have some thoughts and some feels around it. And so that's what I wanted to talk with you about today here on the show. So we're going to get right into it. So welcome to Perspective. I had to look at the name. What's it called? Oh yeah. Welcome to Perspective Shift. This is great. Oh, look at all these people that are with us. We got Mandy. Hi, Mandy. I feel like it's been a few weeks. It's good to see you. By the way, I wonder, I've seen people make the little profile pictures circles, and I like the circle, but mine show up square. Whatever, it's fine. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Hi, Mercy. It's good to see you. Hi, Susan. It's good to see you. And then you talk to each other. Hi, Mercy. Oh, Susan said this. She said hi to me too. Hi, Susan. Great. I like the cross conversations. I'm here for it. Oh, Angie. Hi. Angie says, just discovered your book, UnClobber. Thank you for what you've done for my community. Oh, are you kidding me? It has quite truly been one of the highlights and honors of my life to do the work with UnClobber. So freaking honored. We got a snowy Coloradan joining us. Hi, Bethany. It's cold here in San Diego today too, but it's not snowy cold. So I guess I can't complain too much, but I do have my sweatshirt on because it's a bit meat and kidney beans, taco meat and kidney beans here in San Diego, AKA chili. I need to have a little, how about this? Okay, moving on. Starkovich is here. Hello, Starkovich. Greetings from Phoenix. Thomas Bloom. Hi, Thomas. Haven't seen you in a while. Glad you're here. What up, Scott? I'm glad we get to hang out with you for a few minutes. I'm glad you are with us today. Hi, Melissa. Melissa cannot read comments. That's all right. I will put the good ones up there. Well, I don't know. Sometimes I put ones up there that I don't find out aren't that good until after they're already up there. But glad to have you here with us, Melissa. So what are we going to do today? Well, if you haven't joined me before on one of these Wednesday afternoon perspective shifts, the idea is this. On Wednesday, and you can see sort of scrolling across the bottom there's a URL, colbymartin.substack.com. Substack is is kind of like a online journalism blog writing platform / newsletter that I hopped on several months ago as a new way to sort of communicate to anyone who's interested in what I am interested in, which is kind of the Venn diagram of religion and spirituality and psychology. And so I write these newsletters and send them out every Wednesday morning. And the way you sign up for that is to go to that URL that you see scrolling across the bottom there. And so I started doing that. And then I thought, you know what? I've really been enjoying this live stream world as a result of moving our church services live. And as we'll talk about here in a minute, moving my book launch last year live to the world of virtual. And so I started doing this live show on Wednesday afternoons at 2 p.m. And what I do is I will read the article that I send out in the morning, and then I'll interact with whoever wants to show up and interact with. And sometimes people interact with what I write and the newsletter, and we have a conversation around it. Other times people just show up with other questions. I almost said random questions. They're random for me, but not for you, because they're your questions in your heart and mind. And then we talk about that too. So kind of just anything, almost anything goes here on Wednesday afternoons with me on Perspective Shift. So I'm glad that you are with us, and we're going to jump into it. So what I wanted to do today, and I'll put the little screen up here in a minute, but just big picture, what I wanted to do today and what I'll be doing for the next few weeks, actually. And if you've been with me over the last couple months, you know that I've been doing a series on the authority of the Bible. I was on a podcast a couple months ago, Desert Voices podcast with Shalene and Holland, and they asked me, "What do you think about the authority of the Bible?" And it was one of those, man, I haven't really thought about that in a while. I've thought about the inerrancy of Scripture and um, infallibility and inspiration, but I hadn't really thought much about the authority. And so that made me realize I actually have some thoughts around that. And I would like to articulate that. So I've been spending the last 2 months or so writing articles and doing these live shows on the authority of the Bible. I'm going to hit pause on that. And for the next maybe 3, 4, or 5 weeks, whatever, I'm going to be talking about the shift. And as you'll see here in a minute, it's because today is the 1-year anniversary. Thank you for the congratulations, Mercy. I see you there. Today is the 1-year anniversary of when this book, my second book, was released. And as I'll read here in a minute, it came out at a really bad time last year, and so just didn't really get as much attention and love from me and from others as I would have hoped for. Because when you pour so much of yourself into a thing, and writing a book is pouring a lot of yourself into the thing, you know, like any creative work, you hope that it responds, or you hope that people find it and relate to it and resonate with it, and you hope that whatever success, whatever the metrics are, it didn't really happen last year because of in many ways because of the timing of the whole thing. Anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I will jump in here. And so what I thought I would do is talk about some of the stuff in the shift over the next few weeks. And then I'm calling this, like, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. I'll show you a bit of my shift if you show me some of yours. And so I've got some questions for you who follow along at home, whether it's through the newsletter or on Instagram or on Facebook. I'd love to hear about your faith shift. And so today we're going to be exploring the question of what was the hardest part for you in your shift, in moving away from a more conservative. And I use phrases like conservative Christianity and progressive Christianity, not to create these boxes or this binary that you are one or the other, but to paint a spectrum that myself, and I know many of you as well, spent time in or were raised in or came from a more conservative Christian context. For me, it was an evangelical Baptist context. For you, it might have been a different flavor, but on some level of the spectrum, it was more conservative. And you have experienced a leaving, or in some ways getting kicked out of that community, that church, and you've found yourself moving towards something more progressive, for lack of a better word. And so that's what the shift is about. That's what we're going to talk about. And I'd love to have you, if you want to share, it's completely optional. And you can also direct message me if you don't want to share it publicly. But the one thing I want to explore this week is what's been the hardest part of that shift. And then before we get going any farther, I want to tell you that before we sign off today, I'm going to premiere a brand new video that I created a couple months ago and haven't released until today. Brand new video that tells a bit of one of the stories that I talk about in the introduction to this book, and a little bit of kind of how I see my role in all of this. So that'll be at the end of our broadcast. I'll share that video with you. And then tonight, if you're watching this, if you're with me, and you want to come back tonight, we do have on the Kate and Colby show. So not only do I go live myself on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific here myself, but then tonight, on Wednesday nights, my wife and I do a live podcast called The Kate and Colby Show. And tonight we are having special guest Stacy Furness. And Stacy may correct me on the pronunciation of her last name, but Stacy Furness has been a longtime musician, and she's got a new book that comes out in a couple weeks called Love Makes Room, and it's about the story of what happened when her teenage daughter came out as gay, and it caused Stacy's faith world to collapse. Faith world collapsing? Do we know anything about that? Yes, I think we do. So I'm excited to have Stacy. Kate and I are excited to have Stacy on tonight. That's 7 p.m. So come on back for that if you would like to learn more about Stacy and her work. And we're going to give away some free books of hers, by the way, because that's what Kate and I like to do. Like to give stuff away for free. Anyway, so that's tonight at 7. Okay, wonderful. Let's dive into it. Oh, look at that. Blair My sister-in-law Blair is here. Thank you for applauding. I think you're probably referring to the 1-year anniversary of the shift. Thank you. That's super, super sweet of you. Hello, Mark Sanders. Good evening for you from Georgia. And Melissa, to answer your question, yes. The audiobook of The Shift is coming soon to an internet near you. I don't know how soon because I have to record it still, but that is on my short list of things to do stat, because I was able to procure the audio rights from my publisher because they didn't want to make an audiobook for whatever reason. And I said in the contract, okay, but if after a year that the book's been out, if you haven't done it, give me the rights because I'm going to do it. And so they signed the rights back over to me a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to get in the studio, start recording, and that will be happening soon. Oh no, Bethany, what do you need me to do to get your Wednesday nights freed up? Do you need like a pastor's note? Do I need to send it to a boss? What do you need? Do you need childcare? Do you need me to hire you a babysitter? Anyway. Okay, let's get into this. Here we go. This is today's Perspective Shift article. It is titled, The Faith Shift. I'll show you mine, you show me yours. Subtitle, the story of a book that few people read, while the book itself tells a story that many people have lived. And here's where it goes. And if you haven't been here with me before, what I do is I read a bit and then I pause and check in with you in your comments. So if you have any comments, questions, as you see, I'm monitoring them. I see them. We'll put them up on the screen and we'll periodically interact with one another. Yes, James, to answer your question, both my books are available on the Amazons. So help yourself. Go just Google my name and Amazon, or Google my name, or go to Amazon and search. But both UnClobber and The Shift are there. What's up, Phil Gonzalez? I was starting to wonder if you were going to show, but you're here. Good to see you. All right, here we go. Jumping into it. And there's a little image. What has been the hardest part about your faith shift? And then we move. Why do I look so? All right, moving on. 1 year ago today, April 21st, my second book came out titled The Shift, Surviving and Thriving After Moving from Conservative to Progressive Christianity. Also, 1 year ago today, the United States of America was, at that time, a record number of deaths for COVID-19. Of course, months later, once the wintertime hit, we annihilated those records because we're America and we do everything bigly. We crush records, even the bad ones. But needless to say, the latter event obviously shadowed the former. Obviously, a global pandemic is magnitudes more important than some obscure sophomore release from an author who's a niche among niches, which is writing for the post-evangelical crowd of the, quote, Christian market. It's not a super lucrative industry anyway. It's a niche of a niche. Nietzsche. Nietzsche is the German philosopher. Niche, I believe, is how you pronounce that. And if you've never been with me before, you should know that I often don't pronounce things well and will ask you to help. Anyway, so yes, obviously, when I reflect back to the sort of height of the global pandemic affecting America, that's clearly way more important than my book release. In fact, I got this note here. Shortly after my release date last year, I was talking to a friend of mine who's been in the publishing world for a long time, and she told me that according to the insider publishing data that they had at that time, check this out, during the first couple months of when COVID swarmed America, people were basically reverting back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs when it came to their book buying. You kind of know Maslow's hierarchy. So at the basic down here, the foundational need is like survival, like physical needs, like making sure you can survive. So I thought, if the shift would have been about how to grow potatoes and grow them fast, or if the shift would have been about how to purify your own water and survive an apocalypse, well, then it might have actually moved some copies. However, since the shift mostly deals with the upper half of Maslow's needs of psychological and self-fulfillment, it wasn't really the book that people wanted or needed at that time. During that time, people were buying books just down at the fundamental, like, how do we survive? And my book just wasn't on that list. So in short, this time last year, people were not too concerned with purchasing a book about surviving their exodus from conservative evangelical Christianity. That was what it was. All right, I'll pause there to just check in. Oh, hey, what's up, John Carl Lewis? Good to see you. Glad you are with me today. John Carl Lewis was one of the shifters. I just made that up. But thank you. So glad that you were part of that. Bethany, okay, so you're responding to my question. Yeah, that's fair. We'll allow it. You have that time on Wednesday, and just catch us on the replay or here when you can. Good. I'm glad you're wahooing the release of the audiobook, Melissa. I promise I will let you know when it's ready. Anyway, so that's my introduction. Is a book came out last year on this date, and not very many people cared, and it totally makes sense. Why would they? We were trying to figure out how to survive this virus that was spreading across the world. So, and then on top of that, let me just keep reading. On top of that, because I'm a small-time author, writing with a small publishing house, there obviously last year wasn't any like mass marketing attempt to get the shift out there, right? There's no interviews on the Today Show. There's no ads taken out of the New York Times. Because really, unless you're one of the big 5 publishing houses, or unless you're an A-list author, really the truth of the cold hard facts is that the success of an author's book is largely due to 3 factors. Are you ready? Here's some insider information for you. The success of an author releasing a book into the world is largely due to 3 factors. Number 1, hustle. Number 2, luck. Are you ready? Number 3, I'm just kidding. It really is just hustle and luck. That's it. Those are the 2 things that decide an author's success. So the hustle factor, I break it down like this. Hustle factor is like this. It's things like building out a platform on social media. Right now, publishers really are only publishing books, not because the books themselves are good, but if the author has a built-in platform that they can market it to. The market is so saturated. There's so many books out there that right now publishers are like, we really can only afford to take risks on people that have a social media platform. Got to have followers and fans that we can market directly to. You got the hustle to make an email list so that you can directly communicate with possible customers. Because you might have 10,000 people who follow you on Facebook, but the way that Facebook works is you really can only reach those 10,000 people if you pay gobs of money in advertising. And so you build up your email list, and that way you can communicate directly to people who have signed up to say, yes, I want to hear from you. Number 3, you got to post, part of the hustle, you got to post content regularly. And it's freaking exhausting for anyone who's tried to do like a regular scheduling routine. But it's super important. It's part of the hustle. You got to post regularly, constantly. The hustle of begging people to talk about it, share about it, review your book. Like, how many times have you had someone that you know or that you follow who's written a book that said, hey, will you leave a review on Amazon? By the way, that's partly me. I've asked you that before. Can you leave a review on Amazon? Why? Because that helps and it matters. And that's part of the hustle of like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of work. Again, if you're not a part of a big, even if you are, by the way, part of one of the big 5, and you do have a team, it's still a hustle. None of this just happens. And then the last thing I put on there for the hustle is putting together a speaking tour, which I'll come back to in a minute. And then the luck factor, when I think about the luck that it takes to have a successful book, it's things like, well, who do you know? So much of it is about who you know that can like push the book and share about the book and help people. Like you need people that are multiple levels higher than you, greater than you, whatever, with larger platforms to sort of turn around and be like, hey, here's someone that you might be interested in. But that's so much of that is luck combined with some hustle. There's the luck of, have you caught the wave of the cultural zeitgeist? Like, is your book hitting on the topics that right now are at the front of people's mind? And sometimes you get lucky with that. Sometimes you don't. maybe you might get lucky with a big outlet doing a story on you or your book, and just sort of hit this big news cycle because someone might be suddenly really interested in the book. Or just luck is just honestly, did it hit the right note at the right time? There's just so much luck involved in this sort of stuff. So much of a book's success comes down to luck. One friend of mine who's sold a ton of books in his career once told me, he's like, Colby, I got to be honest with you. A lot of times, really good like books that are really well written and are really good books just never sell. And a lot of times, books that are really crappy sell a ton. Really, oftentimes, the correlation between how good a book is and how much it sells, oftentimes those really don't correlate all that often because there's so many other factors that go into the world of publishing and selling books. So there's just a lot of luck. So there's the hustle factor and then there's the luck factor, and that's about it. You got to be lucky. But then let me go back to the hustle factor for a minute. Let me just actually tune into some of the comments here because I see some of you, and I want to make sure you know that I see you. Susan was reading The Shift this time last year. Thanks, Susan. Hopefully you finished it. Or if you're still reading it a year later, that's fine too. Oh, hey, Kelly Allen. Oh, yes. Hi, Kelly. It's good to see you. It's good to hear from you. Kelly says, UnClobber was a big part of his journey. He recommends it to so many. He says, I look forward to getting a copy of The Shift and reading it as well. Thanks for all you do to promote the truth of unconditional love. Love and appreciate you, brother. Love and appreciate you too, Kelly. I didn't put your comment on just because it would end up taking up the whole screen. Lenny Wrigley, good to see you. Awesome. I see you're answering my question. I'm going to come back to some of these because I see some of you have responded to the question, which is what we want here. And I'm going to come back to some of that here in a bit. Oh, good, Phil. I'm glad to know that you are also looking forward to the audio version. I will let you know when it's out. Susan, I know, right? Need to sign your book. Need this pandemic to end, so start signing books. Oh, Jennifer started The Shift last year and is now finishing it. And that pause is understandable. Let me know when you're done, what you think of it. In fact, we can just wait now if you want. We'll wait. No, I'm kidding. Okay, moving on. Okay, so back to the hustle factor. Let me go back to the hustle factor here, specifically the last one on that list, which was the book tour. So book tours are great. Like, they're not money makers, by the way. Don't get confused and think that authors put together book tours to make money. They don't. It's not the point of a book tour. Book tours are great because really for two main reasons. First is it lets authors go around and meet people in real life, like actually connect, press flesh, well, back before coronavirus, press flesh with people. For me, it was often tons of hugs, and meet the people that you are sort of writing these books with and for. And that's amazing because it lets you meet people, and it helps do the other things in the hustle factor, like increase your platform, social media platform, and email database and all that. So that's great too. But then second, book tours are really helpful because it gives authors repeated reasons to like keep talking about the book and to keep putting out regular content. Like, imagine if an author just did like put out one post like, hey, book release day, everybody, I have a book in the world. And then like the next week to the same post, hey, I have a book in the world. And then a couple weeks later, hey, I have a book. Like, if it's just the same thing, if you're just saying the same thing over and over again, people are, for the right reasons, going to just tune that out. Like, it's going to become irrelevant. And so a book tour gives you like an ongoing supply of photos and stories and testimonies and like fresh content to keep reminding folks, yeah, by the way, don't forget, I got this thing. I made this thing and it's in the world. And do you have your copy yet? And when you're doing it with fresh content and fresh photos and fresh stories and all that, that's just really, really helpful for sort of getting word about the book out. Does that make sense about the book tour? So when The Shift was getting ready to come out last year, I was really excited about this multi-week, multi-city tour that I had put together. A little side note there. Note the I part of that. This goes back to the hustle, because really for small-time authors like me, ain't nobody going to do the work for us. Like this, the work of putting all this together is just really just, for the most part, on the shoulders of the author, unless you're an A-lister and you've got the coveted team. Like, you hear people talk about their team. Oh, that'd be great. Have a team. I've got me. which isn't totally fair, BT dubs. Back when I did UnClobber, my friend Sarah was my sort of makeshift publicist, and she helped me put the UnClobber tour together, which was awesome. And then when the shift came out, it did have a Kelly DeHughes. Oh shoot, Kelly, I'm forgetting your last name. But she helped as a publicist to get the word out about the shift. But like the nuts and bolts of all of it it's really just up to the author, up to me. Point is, I had this great tour plan. I was so excited to go to places like Nashville and New York and Austin and Minneapolis and more. And then the world shut down. And then I just put this little reflection there that the other week I was doing our taxes and going through like some of the invoices from our checking account, and back like in late February, there was like 12 transactions from Southwest Air because the tour was all complete and booked, and I bought all my airfare like in one day, flying here, flying there, like bought it all. Then then I'm scrolling a little bit farther down the invoices, and then it's refund because it was then not too long after I'd bought all the tickets that then it was clear that the tour wasn't happening. Anyway, that was sad to remember. Oh yeah, I was going to do all that traveling and then not. Now, I did do my best a year ago. By the way, if you just joined us, I'm Colby, and I'm celebrating / lamenting / talking about how a year ago today, April 21st, was when my second book, The Shift, came out. I did my best, of course, back then, a year ago, to make lemonade out of the Corona lemons. And the truth is, I'm damn proud of my efforts. Like the live stream extravaganza that I put together was a ton of fun. One of my favorite nights of last year was the book release live stream extravaganza that I put together with the help of my wife and others. And it also got me into the world of live streaming. So I'm doing this today here with you. I've been doing this Perspective Shift live stream for months now because a year ago I couldn't do my actual tour, so I had to figure out how to do a virtual book release, and that led me to Ecamm Live, which is the software that I use, and it got me into the world of cameras and lighting and all that. And so I'm super grateful for that. It's been a great glass of lemonade. And here in the article today, I've got a little link to, let's see what happens if I push that. Oh, it's this little tiny screen. Oh, that's adorable. Anyway, if you actually go to see if I turn off reader mode. There we go. Yeah. You can see how had my friend Glennon Doyle joined me. That was a ton of fun. Brian McLaren joined me. Also a ton of fun. Everybody was a ton of fun. I had a giant beard back then a year ago. Here's the video that I talk about my cat. Faith is kind of like my cat. My brother joined the show, did a live song. Kristen Howerton joined me. Justin McRoberts. Anyway, so this whole thing is on my YouTube page, and this was like a 2-hour book release live stream extravaganza. Had a ton of fun. Super glad for that. All right. Go back here to Ecamm. Wonderful. So I had a blast. And then I also did a virtual podcast tour, which as a way to sort of compensate for the lack of the actual tour. And that was super fun. Met a lot of amazing folks. Went on 20 different podcasts and all of that. There's a link you can see there to the Shift podcast tour at colbymartinonline.com/the shift. You can, if you want to go back and listen to old podcasts, you can do that. And yet neither of those, as great as those were, and they were, neither of them compare to the enjoyment of and the value, the help that a book tour gives an author like myself in having a successful launch and getting their book out there. So as a result of all that, it is an understatement to say that sales of the Shift just were not what any of us had hoped for. It's just the timing could not have been worse, as it were. Now, please know that I know that in the grand scheme of things, a letdown of a book release is microscopic compared to the damage that COVID-19 wrought upon us. So please know that I know that. And I also want to practice being honest with you all that was a real bummer for me. That was like I said at the top of the show, I put a ton of time and blood and sweat and tears and energy into this, and I was super proud of it, and I was excited to put it into the world. So to then have it sort of just as a result of so many other factors, it's just a real bummer. It was a real bummer. So I just wanted to name that and be honest with you about that, knowing that it pales in comparison to some of the much more intense ways that the pandemic impacted people. Okay. So I say all that because if it's all right with you, I'm going to go ahead and take the next month or so to re-announce the existence of the shift. I have in the last year, for due to a number of other factors, my platform, God, it's such a weird thing to talk about. Platform has increased some, and so there are many people that maybe don't know about the shift or don't yet have it in their hands, and so I'm going to remind them. By the way, this book exists, and it might be really helpful for you if you have found yourself exiting the world of conservative Christianity or evangelical Christianity and on the path towards something more progressive. It's like a survival guide for how to handle some of those challenging obstacles. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that for a while, and I want to do it with you. I want to do it with you. So through my newsletter, which many of you subscribe to, you can see the URL right here. Through my newsletter, I'm going to talk about it. Through this live show, Wednesday afternoons, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to like share some excerpts from the book. I'm going to talk about some of my favorite subjects that came up in the shift. And then I thought it'd even be fun to maybe a couple weeks bring on some special guests and do a little side-by-side interview conversation and ask them to share with us what their experience of shifting away from conservative Christianity was like. And that brings me to you, the readers/viewers who are with me here. If you have experienced or currently are experiencing the shift, moving away from conservative expression of Christianity towards something more progressive, I want to hear about it. And so I'm going to, over the next 4 weeks, I've got 4 questions that I'll be asking you. Like the question for today and this week is, what's been the hardest part about your shift? Next week, I'll be asking what has been the most surprising thing for you. And you can take that good or bad. Just, wow, I did not see that coming when I left conservative and moved towards more progressive. Number 3, what are you grateful for as a result of your shift? And then number 4, what do you love most about your new expression of faith? And if you want, you could do either part 2 or respond to this other question. What do you miss from your previous one? Because I think that is worth naming. So all month long, I'm going to be asking you these questions, hoping that you'll share with us. And so this is the question for today. What's been the hardest part about your shift? And I posted that to Instagram earlier today, and I've already gotten some really beautiful and heartbreaking shares that I'll share a little bit with you here. But I also invite you, if you're watching and you want to respond now in the comment section. And if it's too vulnerable for you to share, you can direct message it to me. I won't make public the ones that people have sent privately. But if you want to share, I'd love to hold that space for you. So whether you're in the shift right now, or whether your shift is behind you, and you reflect back on that movement away from conservative Christianity, what was the hardest part? What was the hardest part for you? What was the thing that hurt the most, or what did you lose that was just the most significant loss? So if you're willing to share it, I would love to just be a witness to that loss. All right. If you haven't yet, check out the shift. I think that's pretty obvious by now. And then what's that? Join us live today. Yep, you are doing that already. Well done. Okay. Let's go back to my basic slide here. Okay. Now I'm going to just check in with some of the comments here and maybe put up some that people want to share. If you have anything you want to share, questions you want to ask, now's the time to do that. All right. Someone earlier. Oh, I love this share. Thank you, Odette. Odette says, I wasn't really conservative, but the little biblical knowledge that I had was conservative. And so this faith shift has helped me to be more interested and open to studying the Bible. I love that. Odette, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Starkovich says, I had dreamt of serving in music ministry for myself, for my career. And though I'm thrilled with the hospice work that I do, there's no progressive churches where I live to support a full-time music leader. I've grieved the loss of that dream. Starkovich, that's real, man. That is real. There are not enough progressive Christian churches. End of sentence. New sentence. Even within the ones that do exist, there aren't enough that have what modern, more modern style of music. So there's churches with progressive theology, right? You might have Episcopals, some Methodists, some Lutherans, some Presbyterians. So that exists up here. There's not enough of them. But then the subset of that, of the ones that have more modern style music, that maybe is like a post-evangelical, kind of like our church, has that kind of just more modern music. There's even less of those that are out there. And then a subset of that, of the ones that are out there, the ones that can actually afford to have a staff, afford to pay like a music leader. There's like 6 that I know of. So I feel your pain, brother. Feel that. I was a full-time worship leader in the evangelical world for 10 plus years and loved it. Loved, meaning like loved that my job was to make music and create art and curate those moments and those services. And yeah, I'm sorry. I grieve that loss of that dream with you. All right, who else is here? Scrolling back down. Mark says, one of the hardest things was to let go of the familiar and comfortable, even though it was toxic in some ways. Totally understand that. There's a story in the Gospels where Jesus is in a boat with his friends, and in the middle of the night, the disciples wake up Jesus because there's this nasty storm that was threatening to capsize the boat. And Jesus was somehow sleeping through, and the disciples wake him up, and they're like, "Hey, can you do something about all this?" And Jesus calms the storm. And it was after Jesus calmed the storm that then he turned to his friends in the boat and asked them, "Why are you so afraid?" And I find it so fascinating that the question, "Why are you so afraid?" was presented to the disciples after the storm had been calmed. And I remember a couple of years ago reading that and being struck by this idea that sometimes we might be more afraid of the calm after the storm than the storm itself. Because even though the storm is scary and threatening, a lot of times we're from, like you said, Mark, we're familiar with it. There's a comfortability in the storm. And we can be afraid of moving to the peace, the calm after that. So even though there's like this toxic, oppressive weight in the storm, there's sometimes ways in which, because it's familiar, because it's what we know, it's more scary to maybe move past it, move beyond it. Anyway, thanks for sharing that, Mark. Lenny says, right, so Lenny says the hardest part was taken off that identification of evangelicalism. Yeah. See what happens when you put up a large comment. It just gets really, really big. In the Assemblies of God Church, there's a huge focus on having a strong identity in Christ / evangelical apologetics. So when you realize you're not in that sphere anymore, Lenny says you have to take that robe off, and it leaves you vulnerable, like being naked in front of a group of people who are mocking you. That's hard because not only do you open yourself up and expose, but also with no idea. Yeah, that part of the shift where it's like you no longer have the protection of the group. You no longer have the identity markers that you used to have. Is super vulnerable. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That is, I'm with you on that, Lenny. Very hard. Yes, Mercy, I was going to come to Minneapolis, but hey, the good news in all that is that you wouldn't have known me and I wouldn't have known you. So it would have just been two ships passing in the wind. But now I can come out to Minneapolis, which I'm going to do still someday, and maybe we will get to hang out IRL. Oh, thanks, Melissa. My book launch was a ton of fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. I know, Karen. Karen's like, where would we be without Ecamm? I hardly remember the time before Ecamm. Who even were we then? Yes, I know. The lemonade of that virtual book launch has been a tasty, sugary, delightful, refreshing drink. Thank you for validating my feelings on that, James. Appreciate that. Experiencing the shift, Jennifer says, the hardest part is allowing my heart to tell my brain that I'm not a bad person. Oh, yeah, that's hard. That's hard because the brain, your brain, my brain, our brain have deeply internalized messages about our goodness being directly connected to believing certain things, that our standing with God is dependent upon having the right beliefs. And that if we consider abandoning or changing those beliefs, our brain tells us, oh, but that will put you on the outside with God. That will, you're playing with fire, eternal fire. And so even when we can know that intellectually, like, these beliefs are not true, true, that's not real. Like you said, Jennifer, getting our heart to tell our brain, like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Up here is like, no, it's not, no, it's not, no, it's not. Hey, it's gonna be okay. You're okay. You're a loved child of God. You matter. You belong just as you are. No, we don't. No, we don't. We like, God loves us, but God's holy and God will burn us forever if we don't have the right beliefs. No. I promise you, it's okay. Yeah, getting that to line up, it takes time. It takes time, and I hope that you and anyone else watching this now or later know that it's hard and it takes time. And just because it is hard and it does take time doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means it's hard and it takes time. And it's not, you're not doing it wrong if you're not there yet, if you're still trying to work on those messages, because those ideas up here are so deeply ingrained. It just takes it can take a really long time, sort of let those messages be replaced. My therapist says, let those old tapes be recorded by new, better tapes. Thanks for sharing, Jennifer. Mercy says, the hardest part of my shift was being rejected by my best friend of 33 years. I truly thought that relationship was stronger than theology. It's heartbreaking. To think that a person would, it's painful when people like they see us different, so different that they feel like they can't be in a relationship with us anymore. And you're just left feeling like, what the crap? We've gone through way too much together to now have our relationship break over the fact that I just believe different things. And I can't imagine, Mercy, that you're treating that person differently. You might even be treating them better, right? Less sort of anxious, neurotic control for approval and affirmation, because you realize, oh, I'm loved by God. I don't need to clamor after other people's love so much. But man, I think by the way, you didn't ask for my response on this. So I won't speak to you. I'll just speak about me. One thing that has helped me, because I've had that same pain, one thing that's helped me is to remind myself that when a person is still in, and this was just me for so many years, when you are in a system in which there is a expectation of beliefs in order to sort of belong in this community. If someone goes outside of that, that will activate whatever insecurities might have been lying dormant in a person, which is to say, if I'm in this, like, sure, I may want to ask questions and think differently and feel differently, but I can't because I have to believe the things that the people at the top say I have to believe. So that when you go outside of it, your freedom is a threat to my lack of freedom. The fact that why do you get to be liberated? Why do you get to be outside of this? That's not fair. And I think that can be so hard for people, so painful for people, that all they know to do is to just sever that relationship. Yeah, your freedom, my freedom, can make other people feel real uncomfortable. And it's painful. And it sucks. Yeah, Anna, I see that you are saying a similar thing that Mercy was, that friendship and relationships ending because you have different beliefs now. Melanie says, the hardest part for me has been giving up certainty. That's a really large. I'm like the neighbor on Home Improvement. Anybody watch that show? I watched that show growing up. Melanie, the hardest part has been giving up certainty. It's been so conditioned into us, Melanie says, that we have to have the right beliefs. Oh, and then she says, well, this is fun. Melanie says, I love this excerpt from your book. Melanie, bonus points for you for pulling out an excerpt from The Shift, the reason why we're here today. Where Melanie writes, where I write, if we can see faith as a posture of openness, then we welcome transformation and we welcome growth as friends and not foes. But if we continue connecting faith with certainty, then anything that might promote change becomes a threat. I almost said, I agree. Well, Colby, you wrote those words. Well, that doesn't mean I automatically agree, by the way. I'm allowed to change. If transformation and growth and change, if they are the protagonists of a story, then certainty creeps in as the antagonist. Yeah, that is so hard to give up certainty when we're conditioned to have the right beliefs. That part of the shift, not easy. Karen shares that the fear of what my deconstruction would cost Fable, which is Karen's daughter. The whole spectrum of possible losses from community to her eternal salvation. Yeah, because as parents, we have been tasked with, so the evangelical church told us, we've been tasked with raising our children in the way that they should go, and then they will not depart from it. And so it's not just our eternal salvation that we're responsible for. Now we were told that our kids' salvation is upon us as well. So then to go through a shifting of faith and leaving a conservative community, which might be like, in your case and our case as well, where those kids were born and raised into, it's like, yeah, sorry, kiddo, mom and dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad, we got to go, we're not there anymore. We got some other things to figure out. The ramifications that has on our kids is hard. It's hard. I honor that. Thank you for sharing. Chris dropped in at the right time. Chris, anytime you drop in, suddenly becomes the right time. It's good to see you. Good to have you here. Yeah, Phil, by all means, you can private message me later. I do want to hear. Hi, Danny. Danny's tuning in from Austria. My brain wanted to say Austin. That's totally different. It's Austria. Amazing. Danny says, thank you for your book UnClobber. It came at the perfect time for me and my family. Wow. God, I cannot wrap my head around the ways in which that book has made its way into the world. Just the joy of my life. And look, the shift probably won't ever do what UnClobber has done, and that's okay, because UnClobber, that's doing the thing in the world. And I'm just so grateful to be able to play a part in anybody's journey. What an honor. So thank you, Danny. It's great to have you. Yeah, Phil says, I have started grieving the loss of being able to connect with friends and family, things that used to be understood without saying anymore or anything or not. Yeah, that the shared language has been lost. The shared assumptions and values have been lost. And so now it's just that feeling of loss of connection with friends and family. That's real, man. That's real. Thanks for sharing that. Andrew says, don't suppose I'd come to Scotland. I would love to come to Scotland. Andrew, do you know how to get me there? Probably got to wait till the world opens back up. But when I get that tour back online, I want to come to Scotland. Yes. And Anna going to be waiting for me in Minneapolis too. That'll be so fun. James says, my experience has never been conservative because as a gay man, I always made sure that the church I attended were progressive / open and affirming, but I'm still confused as to whether I'm, for lack of a better term, if I'm getting it right. Does that make sense? Oh, it totally makes sense. That sense of whether I'm getting it right is, I would suggest, potentially grounded or rooted in a belief that getting it right is what matters. And that, I think, is troubling. To think that the thing that God cares about most, the creator of the entire world, to have the opinion that what God cares about most is our ideas, like that we get the right. Think of how many factors, James, think of how many factors are at stake in getting any one individual to come to an idea about something. Think of how many things have to play. Like, just consider all the people that were born before, we're just going to be super conservative here. All the people that were born before the Bible came to be. All the people that were born before anything in the Old Testament. So again, we're being like just casting a wide net here. All the people that were born before the time of Jesus. So the people that never even had an opportunity to hear about God, Yahweh, Jesus, all the people that were born before that, all the people that were born in cultures entirely removed from anything having to do with this rabbi from Nazareth. And then think about all the people that were born in the same maybe time and culture and part of the world, but just never, word never reached them. Or my point is think about, if it is about believing the right things, the number of factors that have to all line up means that a fraction of humans that have ever lived even have the shot at getting the right answer. So I just can't accept that the thing that God cares most about is that humans have the right idea about something, because there's way too many factors that would make that not possible for people, which then makes God just an asshole, is my thought on that. So yeah, that sense of that, like, angst of am I getting it right, is driven by this message that you have to get it right. And what if getting it right isn't what it's about? Freedom. Okay, there's a lot of really lovely comments that I'm not going to have time to get to because I'm 4 minutes away from 3 p.m. But let's keep going. Let's see what we got here. Scott says, decades of work, decades of recognition for scholarly work, sacrifices just seemed pointless, but the chance to start over was replacing all the dulled sense and finding in 3D high graphic beauty found better friends and happiness. Thanks for sharing, Scott. I know a bit of your journey, so it's really fun to see you on here and have you share. Barry says, I went from conservative Christian to atheist to Buddhist to progressive Christian. That's a fun little journey. The whole journey being gay, the hardest part was learning to love myself. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That would be the hardest part, I imagine. Thanks for sharing that, Barry. Hey, Frank St. John. Frank St. John says, I'm a huge fan of your content. Just want to say thank you. That means the world. I really do appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube still, Frank, and you haven't, go ahead and hit subscribe. So awkward little transition, but did want, if you all haven't done so yet, you're invited to like and subscribe. You know these things, right? It's just sometimes we forget. Andrew says, I've been going to church, which is conservative in regards to LGBT, but progressive with everything else. There's a possibility of change, but looks like it'll be hard. Should I try for change or should I move to a more affirming church? Worried if that's running away from issues that need challenge. What do you think? Andrew, this is one of my favorite / hardest questions to answer. So here's my response to that. And I've kind of gone through a number of different ways to respond to this, but right out the gate, I'll say this. I think that and you've seen on some of the stream here, you've seen some of folks who identify as LGBTQ, and so I think hopefully the pain that is real for them when a religion and religious leaders reject them and don't affirm them. So I think the inclusion and affirmation of LGBTQ people is a justice issue, and that to not extend to all people what is their birthright, which is you are a loved child of God just as you are, to not do that is like the height of injustice. And so for me, considering ever supporting an organization that actively practices injustice, to me is counter to too many of my values. So when someone like yourself says, my church is like really progressive in a lot of ways, we do a lot of great, maybe racial justice work, we do a lot of great feeding the poor, we do a lot of really good prison ministry, like whatever it is, you can go down the list and be like, yeah, this is doing a lot of work. And our church is not open and affirming. I will probably say that I think you should find another church. It's kind of like, think about it like this, like if you were to go back in time, 1960s, 1950s, be like, yeah, my church is really, we do a lot of really good work and we do a lot of great things, but we don't allow Black people. Like, we're a white people only church. We would look at that now and be like, yeah, then stop going. Like, don't support that church. Move, go to a different church, which I know is easier said than done because there's just, I said this at the top of this show, like there's just not a lot of churches. So that's generally my response to that. Now, I do think there are some contexts in which churches need time to change, just like humans need time to change. Like I needed time to change in my life. Like I imagine a lot of you needed time to move through a progression of theology and learning to practice your faith differently. So we need to give churches time to change. However, so maybe in your case, it's like you put a timeline on it. So whether you communicate to your church leadership, whether it's just your own internal, it's like, look, because some churches might be like, well, we're open, we want to learn and hear, and we're open to investigating whether we need to shift our policy as a church. Okay, great. I'll give you 6 months. I'll give you a year. Like, this is not going to be just an ongoing thing. This is going to be, if you want to explore this topic, this issue, great. I'll give you 6 months. And if at the end of the 6 months, you're still in a place of, yeah, we don't affirm queer people, then leave, then stop. My point is I get needing to, some churches need people to stick around, to be a part of the transformation, to be a part of building bridges and doing all that work. That's important work. And it can't be indefinite. It can't just be sort of this ongoing. There needs to be okay, at some point, you got to be clear with us. Can my gay family members get married here? Can my lesbian friend be on staff here? If not, then I'm out of here. I can't support this unjust work anymore. It's not, I understand I make it maybe sound easier than it is. I do get that there are some times that is complicated, but at the end of the day, for me, it's like, it's a justice issue, man. Alex says, hi, Alex, by the way. Alex says, the hardest part was believing that it doesn't matter so much what I believe, right? Being like, you might one day be like, okay, I feel good about the fact that it's not about beliefs. And then the next day you're like, but really? Because those messages are buried so deep. It just is so hard to get out of that loop. 100%. But then you have people like Chris that comes along and says, but then being able to throw away the theology of getting it right was so liberating. Yeah, once you can get there, right? Like, man, once you can realize it just isn't about getting it right. That liberation, man, is just, it's everything. Yeah, Phil supports that up by saying so many Bible passages support the idea that being right does not save us, right? Yeah. You're welcome, Odette. Kim says, my evangelical friends that I knew through Bible college and campus ministry continue to reach out to be sure that I know. Yeah, I'm sure you know what they think already. They don't need to keep saying it, right? And they do it all in the name of speaking the truth in love. Yeah, Kim, I'm with you. That's not love. That's not love. We know what love, like, we know when something feels like love and we know when it does, right? That's not love. That is them. Here's my completely armchair psychologist judgmental attitude. That's them projecting their insecurities on you. That's them resentful that you found the theological liberation that Chris mentioned a minute ago. You found it and they haven't. And they don't like that. That makes them uncomfortable. And they think their job is to try to save you. And it's not. And I'm sorry. You don't deserve that. You don't deserve that. Andrew, I'm glad that was helpful. All right, everybody. I've now hit the 3 o'clock time, which is usually when I try to wrap these up. If you'd like, set a reminder to join me again next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, because like I said at the top of the show, we're going to keep talking about The Shift. This is my book that came out a year ago, and it came out at a really bad time. So I'm kind of reminding people that this thing exists in the world. I'd love for you to check it out if you haven't yet. Come back tonight, the Kate and Colby show. We're going to be joined by Stacy Furness. Stacy is a longtime musician, so she's going to share some of her music with us. And she's an author of an upcoming book called Love Makes Room, which is the story of her faith collapsing when her teenage daughter came out as gay. So I love these sorts of stories. I'm like, oh, your faith collapsed? Let's talk about it. That'll be super fun. So Stacy's going to come join the Kate and Colby show. That'll be tonight at 7 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube as well. Oh, yeah, I didn't mean to put that up again, but it did. And then that's it. That's for me. That's all I've got. If you haven't yet done so, I invite you to go to colbymartin.substack.com to sign up to join my perspective. Good. That was really, really well said. Thank you, Kim, for being with us. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Mercy. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, other Phil. Love you all. Have a good week. See you next Wednesday or tonight if you come back. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Perspective Shift. I'm going to now invite you to do one of 3 things, or do them all if you're an overachiever. First, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to my free Perspective Shift newsletter. You can do that by going to colbymartin.substack.com. This will ensure that each week the articles that I write arrive safely in your inbox. Second, if you're watching this on YouTube, just go ahead and hit subscribe on my channel. That'd be awesome. And or if you're watching this on Facebook, would you click like on my page? For me, this is a win-win in that it helps me know that you're out there and that you care. Plus, it helps you know when I'm going live. For all my other work, including books that I've written or sermons that I've preached, head on over to colbymartinonline.com. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me live next week.